So on behalf of RC 29 Social Transformation and Development, so we have organized today's special guest lecture on development and social transformation, gendered perspectives on the idea of Viksit Bharat. So which will be delivered by Professor Arvinder Ansari Madam, Secretary, Indian Sociological Society. Now, it's my privilege and duty to know about Professor Ansari Madam, though we are aware, but it's very important and formally to know about all the research scholars about Madam. So I will introduce about Madam and then we can go ahead. So this is my brief kind of maybe the introduction about the Madam. So Professor Ansari is a distinguished sociologist and professor at the Department of Sociology, Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. With an academic career of spanning nearly 3 decades, she has made significant contribution to the teaching, research, institutional development, and professional sociological associations in the interdisciplinary and different organizations and associations with the civil society organizations, development organizations. Her work reflects a deep commitment to inclusive scholarship, interdisciplinary engagement, and advancement of the sociology as a discipline and addressed pricing the social needs. Professor Ansari, Madam, has done her education from JNU, prior to that Jamia Millia, and her academic training in sociology shaped her interdisciplinary research interest that span minorities, ethnicity, gender, religion, conflict, and peace building. So at Jamia Millia Islamia, Professor Ansari has held several important academic positions and administrative positions as well. So she has served as the head of the Department of Sociology. She has also been the director of the Sarojini Naidu Center for Women's Studies. She has also honorary director of the Center for the Study of the Social Exclusion and Inclusive Policy. Her research work broadly focuses on minority studies, gender studies, religion, ethnicity, peace, conflict studies, and feminist perspectives in sociology. Professor Ansari has played a very important role and active role in the professions of sociological community. She has been closely associated, and now she is a secretary of the Indian Sociological Society. Managing committee members 2018 to 23. Then founder and convener of the RC Committee's 26 Minority Studies. Then the convener of the Research Committee 22, Conflict and Peace Building. Her engagement with the international sociological associations and network has been important in terms of development of the discipline. Her international sociological association engagement important in terms of maybe the board of studies or the members of maybe the various committees as an academia in terms of the newsletters and research committees like RC32, Women and Society. Apart from that, professor has served a very important role in terms of the visiting professor like Shivaji University, Kolhapur in Maharashtra, plus JNU, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. And she has worked very extensively and published dozens of articles and papers and authored and co-authored books as well. She has delivered numerous invited lectures at the universities across the India on the topics including feminist perspective, qualitative methods, globalization and religion, gender and development, and ethics in the social science research as well. The last week also she has delivered lectures and played an important role in terms of organizing the memorial lectures on behalf of the Indian Sociological Society. So, madam, I think there is a 21 pages that CV. I will not go into those details, but because it will automatically come through your deliberations and your presentation, obviously, yeah. And for today's session, we have requested Professor Manish TIWARI, who is our active member of our RC29 and even prior to that RC15, that to be part of the discussant. Okay, Professor is from the NIT Patna and has been very active, actively involved and supporting to organize all guest lectures and so on. So today we have with us Professor VN Prasad also. Sir, your comments, your maybe the other kind of maybe the support and things, okay, is really expected. And definitely you are there, and you will definitely participate when we have questions, answers, and some kind of discussions on those things. I think with this background, I would like to request Professor Ansari, Madam, to over to you, and please, Madam, your lecture, and we all are eagerly waiting to listen to you and to see the different, maybe the areas in which that you are planning to deliver this today's lecture. Over to you, Madam. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Sampat Kale ji, for such wonderful words for me. And I'll try my best to live up to your expectations. And very, very good afternoon to my dear colleagues present here. The discussant for the session, Dr. Manish Tiwari, Dr. Professor B.N. Prasad, who is a senior colleague, and I see many among them whom I know, but it would be very difficult to name individually. But I extend my warm greetings of the day to you all. And I am really pleased to be here amongst you people. And I am also very happy that RC29 is doing such a good, wonderful task of, promoting academic activities, holding online talks. So, the will is very important. And it is always said, where there is will, there is way. So, with these words, I would come back to the theme which I'm supposed to speak on today. So, I'm going to talk about development and social transformations, gender perspective to the idea of Viksit Bharat. Friends, development has been something very significant, and we as students of sociology bank heavily on development for social transformation, social change. And I always say that development can be one step forward, two step backwards. Development is not linear, and how development has shaped not only the society, but particularly how development agenda has influenced women is also very, very important. So I would like to reflect on the question that lies at the heart of contemporary debate on development, social transformation, and gender justice. What does it mean to imagine a developed India, a Viksit Bharat, from a feminist perspective? Now, before that, I would like to spend a second on explaining the idea of Viksit Bharat 2047, which has emerged as one of the most prominent national visions in recent policy discourse in India. The year 2014, 7 marking 100 years of India's independence, has been framed as a symbolic horizon, a moment where the country seeks to transition from developing economy to fully developed nation. With this vision, development is imagined as a multidimensional transformation: economic growth, technological innovation, improved infrastructure, social welfare, and global leadership. The vision often emphasizes the vision of Viksit Bharat is based on 4 foundational pillars, which is also said Gyan, that in Hindi gets translated in Garib, Yuva, Andata, or Nari. And in English, it says youth, the poor, farmers, and the women, suggesting that national transformation must be inclusive and participatory. So, at the level of policy discourse, Viksit Bharat is not simply about economic growth. It is framed as a project of inclusive development, aiming to combine economic expansion with social justice, technological progress, environmental sustainability, and improved governance. Yet, for sociologists and feminist scholars, the vision raises deeper analytical questions. And it is very right because, on one side, in our contemporary debates in sociology, we are talking about hope, we are talking about utopia, we are talking about risk. And we see that the development paradigm promising us, the promising us prosperity. But what is this prosperity, and how is this prosperity distributed in the society and into the various sections becomes a very, very important question to engage with. So, development, as we know from decades of scholarship, is never merely an economic process, it is also a social transformation. And this is very important that sociologists shift from the economic understanding of development to the social understanding of development, which is social transformation that reshapes power relations, institutions, identities, and everyday life. So, when we look at development as a important phenomena for social transformation that shapes or reshapes power relations, institutions, identities, and everyday life, it brings another question to my mind. If development transforms society, how does it transform gender relations? Can a nation become developed if gender hierarchies remain structurally embedded in the social institutions? And this is a standpoint from where I would like to share my views on this very important, pertinent topic, that development as a social transformation. So when we look at classical sociology, development was often understood in evolutionary terms. Thinkers such as Marx, Weber, Durkheim saw modernization as a process that transformed traditional societies into industrial ones. Now, very interestingly, in this narrative, development meant industrialization, urbanization, expansion of market, bureaucratic governance, and new forms of citizens and rights. However, feminist scholars have long been pointing out that these classical narratives were profoundly gender blind. And very interestingly, if we look at the reports right from 1975 who have been knocking on our minds that women are invisibilized. So 1975, when Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment brought its report on the status of women in India and globally also, we see they were the decade from 1975 to 1985 or 86, 76 to 86. I mean, there is this overlap, was earmarked as a women's decade. Now, what was the need nationally and globally? What was significantly missing in development was the invisibilization of women. One. Second, with the coming of these new policies, LPG liberalization, privatization, and globalization, we saw, oh, there are many women, and we started patting our backs. औरतें हर जगह दिखती हैं. They are in jobs, they are in schools, they are in universities, they are in but the data which came, the development practitioners who produced this data told us the story behind this figures. Where are women in these in terms of positions? Are they occupying decision making positions, or they are at the first step, or first, on the in the ladder, they are on the first step? And what is happening to the market, to the economy with LPG? We see casualization of work, and in this casualization of work, we see feminization of labor. And we see feminization of poverty. We see that there are women, but they are becoming poor, insecure as far as their job guarantees are concerned. So, if you look at the mainstream development discourse, which primarily projected women as dependents, beneficiaries, or symbols of social progress, but rarely as an agents shaping development in itself. And that is very much visible in the approaches, development approaches, our journey from WID, that is women in development, to GAD, that is gender and development, WID, WAD, and GAD. Tell us about this trajectory of development approaches, where we see that women as dependents, then from beneficiaries, and then we see with this third approach, that is scared gender and development, when there is little bit of halla bolo in the third wave feminism, that we want women not to be there as mere beneficiaries or dependents. We want to register our voice. We want to be agents in shaping development for ourselves. And this is feminist epistemology, the strength women's movement was gaining globally. And it is not that women's movement was gaining strength globally and it was progressing in a linear position. There are interesting stories, there are interesting trajectories of women's movement. For instance, if we look at our women's movement in India, we see that 1986 becomes a rupture in women's movement when Shabano case came. So there was a division in women's movement. They were divided, and the question, actually the women's movement in India was more dominated by liberal left, and organizations like EDWA had no place of religion. But we see 1986, 1989, 1984, 1992, starting from Shah Bano to 1984 riots to Babri Masjid demolition and so forth, 2002. So the women's movement had did not answers to the questions of minority women. So this is how the trajectory of development was being questioned and being charted. When I talk about wit, so I would say that that was an approach which was focusing on efficiency, empowerment, equity, and it brought in the question of welfare. And here the women were more looked up as beneficiaries who would get a beneficiary. But this particular report, WID was popular report, but it could not get cut ice with the radical feminists because it did not talk about structures. It accepted the given structure and wanted to bring on some changes. So as we moved on the path of development, new approaches were coming. We gave birth to where women and development, where we were looking at the participatory role of women, that how we make women partners. But very important thing was it had uh, it demanded that we change the understanding of development. It has not to be top down, it has to be bottom up. So women's stand positionality in development becomes very important, and significantly work of Chandra Talpanti Mohanty becomes very important. Why her work becomes very significant is because she critiques this development approaches which are, she feels, dominated by the mindset of Western white women. The position, the environment, the location of women in global South is very different, and the development approaches have to be taking cognizance of their lives, their locations. So, this was one concern which was raised by Chanda Mahanti. Then there was another important concern which was coming from Black feminist. Collins talks about Black feminist, and she says that how Black feminism is very different in its perspective from white feminism. So it talked about intersectionality. These approaches kind of pointed out on intersectionality, that intersectionality of, when we talk about development, intersectionality of race, language, class, caste, ethnicity, region becomes very important. And in our own context, we see when we look at the question of minority women, and specifically, a lot of work has been produced on Muslim women, and my own researches have also focused on that. And also, I mean, partially I have done some work, not very, I mean, not published as such, but have presented papers on Sikh feminism and how, minority women's perception is shaped in a multicultural society. How does she feel at the intersectionality of patriarchy, religion, and caste? So these become very, very important questions. So not only this, if we look at the development from the, I mean, of course, the development approaches did not limit or did not stop at WID, WAD, and GAD. It went beyond that. We had WED, that is Women, Environment, and Development, became a significant movement. Ecofeminists emerged, challenging the and critiquing the modern development agenda. Inwardly, also, we had Amartya Sen, Naila Kabir, Martha Nussbaum, Bina Agarwal, who have been talking about development as a deeply gendered phenomena. They also said that we need to revisit development. Economic growth does not automatically produce gender equality. In many contexts, development can even reproduce existing inequalities more sharply by integrating women into labor markets without transforming their patriarchal structures. For example, women may enter the workforce yet remain concentrated in low paid sectors, in informal labor, precarious employment, and that is why we look at feminization of poverty and feminization of labor coming as a challenge to LPG. So, improvement in education, health do not necessarily translate into greater autonomy or decision making power for women. Thus, from feminist sociological perspective, development must be understood not simply as economic change, but as a transformation of power relations within the society. So, the mainstream development approaches or the critique of feminists about the what they call, they don't call it mainstream development approach, they call it mainstream development approach. And Pamela Abbott has very beautifully talked about feminist sociology, sociological imagination from feminist perspective, where she says that feminist epistemologies challenge mainstream development thinking for several decades. Development institutions have adopted the language of gender equality and women's empowerment. Now, these words repeatedly appear in policy documents, global development agendas, and national progress. Now, this feminist for feminist scholars that this language has often been institutionalized in a ways that dilute its transformative potential. So, what do I mean when I say that it dilutes its transformative potential? Because interestingly, we see, when we talk about empowerment, and I have been talking it many a times, who is empowering us? If you look at the Constitution of India, I think that is the Bible, the document which empowers, which gives its citizens its rights. It talks about duties, and then we look at the Constitution. It is very, very egalitarian in spirit. Not only egalitarian in spirit, it gives all the rights to women and to and it also has a provision for directive principles directing states to curate policies which are promoting gender parity, which are gender just, which facilitate. Now, very important thing is when we look at the transformative potential, what do we actually mean by transformative potential? There should be change. When we talk about empowerment, it is not only giving women opportunities to go to schools, find employment, it is also, empowering them, giving that agency, exercising their choice to shape their lives. This becomes very important. So this transformative potential, I always give example of Malala and Bhavri Devi in my class when I talk about women's empowerment, because these two case studies are very important and significant. It should give you that power where you can navigate the structural barriers. It should give you that confidence, which is very important. So now, what has happened is, interestingly, when we look at development reports, so gender becomes a very, very important tool to measure development. How? Because, this is a very, very important way of understanding the progress of a society. Now, for instance, per capita income is no longer a parameter or living standard as a kind of parameter for, ranking the societies. It is, the literacy rate, the reproductive health, the now very interestingly happiness index. These are very, very important concerns. So what we see, Esther Basarab talked about add and steer approach. So what this concern post 1975 and Beijing conference, of course, the state has become sensitive to it, and it has started adding gender in its policy documents, in its reports. But what feminists have criticized about this is that it is add and steer approach. States have started investing in women. They have started investing in welfare, family planning, education, educating girls, providing with certain facilities, midday meal, uniforms. So the whole idea is, by this projection, you want to give the message that empowering women will boost up the national GDP. But uh, while these arguments may attract policy attentions, but they risk reducing women to economic resources rather than citizens with right and autonomy. Women's empowerment becomes justified not because it is a matter of justice, but because it produces economic return. So this very important concern the technocratization of gender, which lies in the bureaucratization of gender inequality, like gender mainstreaming, women's empowerment, inclusion often become administrative categories. So, development institutions create indicators, monitoring frameworks, policy checklists, but these tools frequently fail to address the structural roots of gender inequality, that is, patriarchal norms, unequal property relations, gender division of labor, violence against women. Therefore, as a result, gender policies often integrate women into existing systems without transforming those systems. Friends, we have seen this, now why women want to work is very interesting question. We need to go beyond to understand women and work, that why they want to work. Yes, of course, you would say, what kind of question is there? There is economic compulsion. They want to be orientation, their aims, their objectives, to be earning, economically independent, and they have the right to do that. Fine. But then we also have to have a different lens to look at, how patriarchal norms are reproduced and produced in public sphere. Is the private sphere being reproduced in, I think because there are a number of cases of sexual harassment at workplace, so we have this Act 2013. So unequal property relations, there is lot of documentation, lot of reports which have talked about women not getting equal inheritance rights, and we see we have a law now. Now, what is very important, gender division of labor, though women have stepped into public domain, they are in the market, but their initial role as caregivers has found no respite. They are somehow considered as the primary caregivers. And violence against women is taking new forms. Maybe, we see that wife bettering is reducing, but it is not reducing actually. The physical violence is reducing. Maybe in some families, the sensitization is happening. But we see that velocity of violence is increasing. You see, the new forms of crimes against women have come, for instance, cyber stalking, or misuse of social media to to define women, the digital tools which are being used to shaming women are also there. So we have of this very popular incident which happened in Delhi to the Shine Bagh women, Bully Deal and Sully Deal, where Muslim women were auctioned on the online platform. So you see, I'm just giving this example because this is coming to mind, immediately. So we see that these kind of platforms, these kind of uh, questions are very important, and sociologists cannot ignore these questions. So we have to integrate gender policies, have to integrate these questions. We have to look at beyond development and see that how we would lead to a Viksit Bharat, which is very important question. We cannot talk about Viksit Bharat without participation, without engaging. So when we talk about Viksit Bharat, both equity and equality, so we have to address the question of patriarchal norms, property relations, gender division of labor, violence against women when we are talking about. So, therefore, it is very important that we do not limit our analysis to single access gender analysis. We have to adopt intersectional feminist scholarship, particularly based on work of Kimberly Crenshaw and Patricia Hill Collins, because intersectionality reminds us that gender never operates in isolation. Women experience inequality through multiple intersecting structures of power, that is caste, class, ethnicity, sexuality, and disability, and how it is, weaved into women's life is very important. And when we talk about India, the experiences of Dalit women, agricultural worker, differ profoundly from those of an urban professional women. Their experiences of Muslim women facing, exclusion is very different. So it brings in the question of heterogeneity. हर महिला की स्थिति अलग है, उसकी लोकेशन अलग है, उसके उसके इकोनॉमिक पॉलिटिकल सोशल सर्कमस्टांसेस अलग हैं. If I go back to the question of Shah Bano, when Shah Bano had filed this application for relief in the court, her situation was very different. But फिर होता क्या है कि जब उसको स्टेट से रिप्रीव मिल भी जाता है, सुप्रीम कोर्ट से उसको एक तरह से कुछ रिलैक्सेशन मिलती भी है, वी सी द प्रेशर ऑफ द सोसाइटी emerging on her, and she could not sustain that. So the feminist approach uh, therefore has to move beyond this single category of women and recognize the plurality of women experiences. How my, for instance, we are all sitting here in the room, and we all know, we have all, I mean, most of us who have joined this online meeting are coming from good backgrounds, are having, or maybe having worked to reach to this level, and we are all blessed to lead a comfortable life. But we also carry our gender identity on our mind when we are driving on the roads, we are in the public spheres. The how do we read darkness, how do we read alienated spaces, how do we read isolation? हमारे लिए अंधेरे का क्या महत्व है, हमारे लिए रात का क्या महत्व है, हमारे लिए अकेले deserted जगह पे होने का क्या मतलब है? So these are very important concerns. I remember, when I was the provost in 2009, so 11th plan में एक provision था for all the universities to bring out with the plans for the gender development, campus gender development programs. So now this was a UGC's mandate, that infrastructure, we have to see the infrastructure which has to be gender facilitating. So when I looked at that document, it meant that there has to be common rooms in all the departments. If the universities are large, it has to be at the departmental level. School में होना चाहिए common room. जो हॉस्टल्स, यूनिवर्सिटी से हॉस्टल जाने की या कॉलेज से हॉस्टल जाने की जो सड़कें हैं, उनमें लाइटिंग का प्रॉपर प्रोविजन होना चाहिए, एंड मेनी अदर थिंग्स वर देयर कि किस तरह से हम फैसिलिटेट कर सकते हैं एक एनवायरनमेंट को, उसको एक जेंडर फ्रेंडली बना सकते हैं. सो नाउ दीज कंसर्न्स फॉर इमर्जिंग फ्रॉम द डॉक्यूमेंटेशन, हाउ द क्वेश्चन of gender security becomes important in cities like Delhi, Bangalore, where every day we hear about, the crisis and crimes, violence against women. So, uh, we see, I mean, I will not say that we have not made any progress. We have made a lot of progress in terms of education, health, political representation, but still gender inequalities remain deeply embedded in Indian society. Data across sectors reveal persistent disparities. Like, India continues to rank relatively low on global gender equality indexes. Women labor force participation remains significantly lower than men. Here, I would like to qualify in the organized sector. In unorganized sector, we see that the women force is there. Gender-based violence remains widespread. In fact, we are scared about how cyber crimes against women are becoming more pervasive. So we need to look at this. So women also face barriers in employment due to wage gap, occupational segregation, lack of childcare infrastructure, workplace discrimination. Even in sectors where women are highly educated, the glass ceiling phenomena limits their access to leadership roles. You will say that what I'm talking very traditionally. No, friends, I'm not talking very conservatively or traditionally. I mean, of course, now we have women vice chancellors, we have women registrars. But very important is to look at in what environment they are operating. Are they the yes men, or they are asserting themselves? That becomes a very, very important question. Because if you would look very interestingly, UGC had started this program on women administrators. And when I was also a part of that, because I was one of the resource persons, and I was DOT, that is the, they trained people, they pick up people from the faculties, and they train these women to, hold these workshops in different universities and colleges. Interestingly, what we noticed was that universities, or any organization for that matter, discouraged, assertive women. They didn't like assertive women who had their independent mind. And there were a lot of stories, from the university, from the field of medical sciences, from bureaucracy. And one very important example is we have this case of Kiran Bedi when she was supposed to become the DG in Delhi, how she was, superseded and her junior was promoted. Interestingly, when I was going through, and this did not happen to her for the first time. This had happened to her earlier in her career when her daughter was very small. So I don't remember the exact reference, but I do remember the context that she was not promoted, quoting a reason that she has a small child to take care of. So her promotion would mean, spending more time in the field, and which would interfere with her caregiving responsibilities. And interestingly, when you look at this whole debate of feminism, and when we start with this debate on liberal feminism, Flavia Agnes has provided wonderful examples. And for us, west is best. हम west को quote करने की कोशिश करते हैं, लेकिन west, how west is also oblivion to women's assertiveness is very important. There are a lot of examples which Flavia gives from, these laws and legislations which were operating in Victorian times. So you know that with the industrialization, the production was shifted from household to market. अब क्या होगा कि अब औरतों को कैसे एंगेज किया जाए? तो वेस्ट में बहुत अच्छे किस्से कहानियाँ मिलते हैं वेयर दे हैव बीन, आई मीन ऑफ कोर्स दिस किस्से कहानियाँ आर नॉट बेस्ड इन वैक्यूम, दे हैव सम element of reality, social reality being reflected in these stories. And so, there were a lot of finishing schools which came up in London. Now, what were these finishing schools? These were finishing schools where parents would send their girls to, to learn the etiquettes, how to dress, how to eat, how to talk. And Flavia Agnes gives a very good argument. Now they were being engaged into these activities, and state was bringing change in the laws, in employment of women in the mines, in the other occupations where there were night shifts, and where there, all those spaces where it was interfering with their caregiving roles. And these curating schools, or these finishing schools, also talked about women as agencies of socialization, who were kind of trained to perform their caregiving roles with sophistication. So therefore, when we look at the debates in feminism on development, the feminist epistemologies in 1980s, 1990s kind of urge that we need to rethink development more critically. So they kind of proposed alternative epistemological frameworks. One very important is capability approach, which transform the development thinking. Rather than measuring development through income or GDP alone, the capability approach focuses on human freedoms and capabilities. And I also feel when we talk about empowerment is emancipation. It is not only, gaining economic independence or, being educated. It is very important when it gives you the agency and you feel free and emancipated. So, from gender perspective, this means asking questions very pertinently. Feminist epistemologies raise the questions that: do women have control over their bodies? Do they participate in decision making? Do they enjoy freedom from violence? Do they have access to education, health, and mobility? Developments, therefore, must be evaluated not merely through economic growth, but through enhanced human capabilities. So, very important thing is that when feminist epistemologies suggested that there has to be development alternatives, and they said that how would it make difference if we have women, if the development is aligned, or development is a bottom-up approach and not the top-down approach. Standpoint theory argues that knowledge is shaped by my social position. So, there cannot be one model of development. From this perspective, analyzing development through the experience of rural women, Dalit women, minority women, migrant women can reveal dimensions of inequality and remain invisible in mainstream policy making. So, I'm giving you this background that these dimensions, whether, this intersectionality of caste, class, region, ethnicity, reveals inequalities that remain invisible in mainstream policy framework. And here we have an occasion, we have a chance when we are talking about Viksit Bharat. So what is the sociological imagination of feminists when we talk about the Viksit Bharat, and how in India gender question is going to address the concerns of caste hierarchy, religious identities, regional disparities, class inequalities. So we know Viksit Bharat must recognize the diversity of women's experiences and struggles. The vision of developed India by 2047 is ambitious and inspiring. It seeks to create a nation that is economically strong, technologically advanced, socially inclusive, environmentally sustainable. However, a feminist perspective invites us to ask deeper questions. And what are those questions? What kind of development are we pursuing? Is development measured primarily through economic indicators such as GDP growth and infrastructure expansion? Yes, of course, there is an answer in Viksit Bharat. It talks about inclusion, it talks about uh, it talks about social, cultural, and political aspects also. But what are how we have to move is very important. How do we involve policies which transform the social structures that shape our everyday life? So, we need a feminist evaluation of Viksit Bharat, which requires very important three critical principles. And what is that? Feminist principles for Just and Viksit Bharat should be inclusion. The first principle is inclusion. We have included Nari, but Nari at different intersections, women at different intersections should be there. So development must ensure that women participate fully in all spheres of life: economic, political, social, technological. Inclusion means, we have this important concern of digital divide, cybercrime. Wallstein has talked about a new world order. And friends, we don't know how these wars are going to shape, and how, I was just looking at today there was this Professor Abhijit Pathak's very important article which was being circulated. I'm sorry, I'm bringing into it because I have to bring this in because it is talking about consciousness. It is pricking the soul of a sociologist who's saying that, when we look at the memes, the videos which are out, they've made appear this war as a documentary, but which is much more serious tragedy. And I was when today I was thinking, when I was preparing for this lecture, I was thinking that what can women do? How can women bring a social transformation? Because if we read at the accounts right from our own country, हम अगर अपनी हिस्ट्री को देखें, हमारे यहाँ पे अम्रपाली ने बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट रोल प्ले किया था. उसने अशोका के मन को बदला था. शी काइंड ऑफ शोड द पेन एंड द सफरिंग ऑफ द सिविल सोसाइटी in the war. So I was just thinking that, gender also has to play a very, very proactive women organizations. I'm very sorry and pained to see that the question of identity has also influenced women's movement in different countries. So now we have Brahminical feminism, we have Dalit feminism, we have Islamic feminism, and I'm working right now on Sikh feminism also. So, of course, these feminisms are very important. I'm not saying that we can have one, broad narrative of feminism. Then we cannot, address the question of intersectionality. So, very important is that we have to bring in the question of um, the stand positionality, which Sandra Harding said that when we are researching on women, it is very important to do researches, to bring in policies, and researches are very important. Researches are important because they feed into the policies. So when we are talking about researches, so they have to address the question of stand positionality, the social structures that shape everyday experiences of women. And empirical realities are very important. We cannot talk about empirical realities, you can talk about in sociology, empiricism is very important. So book view has to be matched with the field view. Second very important principle, which feminist principle, which should be part of Viksit Bharat and which should, critically look at the question of Viksit Bharat is plurality. India is deeply diverse society characterized by multiple identities and cultural traditions. Therefore, a feminist vision of development must recognize the plurality of women's experience across caste, religion, region, and class. Policies must be sensitive to the diversity rather than assuming uniform category of Indian women. Third very important point is stand positionality. This requires acknowledging the knowledge about development, about which should emerge from the lived experiences of marginalized communities. Listening to grassroots voices, Gayatri Spivak, Can Subaltern speak. So grassroots voices, women's movement, local communities is therefore essential for shaping inclusive development policies. So a feminist vision of Viksit Bharat will be something like this. It would like to, it would like to aspire society to build with a vision emphasizing on dignity, equality, autonomy, social justice. It recognizes that development must transform not only economies but institutions, cultures, and power relations. A nation cannot truly be called developed if half of its population continues to face structure inequalities. देखिए बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग चीज़ें होती हैं. मैंने बहुत सारी, it is now almost 30 years of my experience in teaching, and I have been interacting with so many people, I mean, across age and across age, culture, caste, religion. तो बड़े इंटरेस्टिंग किस्से आते हैं एम्पावरमेंट के, और मैं कई बार, मुझे बहुत बार ये किस्से और ये कहानियाँ जो इमर्ज होती हैं कि जब हम कहते हैं कि एम्पावरमेंट और डेवलपमेंट का मतलब है ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन, तो इकोनॉमिक इंडिपेंडेंस से मैं अपनी इकोनॉमिक स्थिति तो बदल लेती हूँ, लेकिन उस पैसे को जिसको मैं कमाती हूँ उसको खर्च करने पे मेरा कितना हक है, मेरी कितनी चॉइस है। मेरे पास बहुत सारे ऐसे छोटे-छोटे कहानियाँ हैं, हो सकता है कभी मौका मिलेगा तो फिर किसी मौके पे मैं बात करूँगी। लेकिन 1-2 चीज़ें मैं आपको शेयर करूँगी। मैंने अपनी बहुत सारे सीनियर मेंटर्स को देखती थी जो कि वेल स्टडीड पावरफुल प्रोफेसर्स थी। पर उनकी जो, या कुछ मेरी दोस्त भी हैं अभी ऐसी, जो एक अच्छा पे पैकेट लेती हैं, बट वो अपने पसंद से अपने ऊपर अगर उन्हें पैसा खर्च करना होता है तो वो उस कॉन्फिडेंस के साथ नहीं कर सकती हैं। तो वो उस सिचुएशन को बहुत ब्यूटीफुली नेविगेट करती हैं। वो कि अपने दोस्तों से कई बार रिक्वेस्ट करती हैं, देखिए ये सामान मैं अपने लिए खरीद रही हूँ, बहुत एक्सपेंसिव है। मतलब मेरे हस्बैंड तो इसके लिए खुश नहीं होंगे, उनको अच्छा नहीं लगेगा, लेकिन मेरे को बहुत पसंद है, मैं ले रही हूँ। और आप जब मेरे घर आएँगे तो इसको मेरे लिए गिफ्ट के तौर पे लेते आइएगा। सो यू सी, दिस इज़, आई एम गिविंग यू वेरी स्मॉल एग्ज़ाम्पल। इसी तरह से घरेलू महिलाएँ जो बाहर नहीं निकलती, वो भी इन चीज़ों को नेविगेट करती होंगी। वेरी इंटरेस्टिंगली जब आपने देखा कि किस तरह से जब डिमोनेटाइज़ेशन हुआ तो औरतों के पास कितना-कितना पैसा निकला। वो छोटी-छोटी सेविंग वो जिस बहाने से भी करती थीं। So, there were many families, we have not looked at demonetization from gender perspective, but I remember reading one article in one of the newspapers where, these women, grassroots women, they felt कि उनकी जो saving थी, जो उन्होंने घर के लिए ही रखी थी, they have not kept it for self. बेटी की शादी के लिए, बेटे की पढ़ाई के लिए, या अपने पति को ही कुछ वेडिंग एनिवर्सरी पे तोहफ़ा देने के लिए या किसी ओकेज़न पे खर्च करने के लिए, जब वो बाहर आई और फिर वो जब उसका कन्वर्शन हुआ, तो जब वो कन्वर्शन हुआ तो फिर वो उसके हाथ में नहीं आया। वो कन्वर्शन है, वो कन्वर्शन होके जो फिर वो पैसा है वो फैमिली किटी में चला गया या हस्बैंड के पास चला गया। दूसरा एक बहुत छोटा-सा एग्ज़ाम्पल और देती हूँ मैं आपको कि बिकॉज़ दिस ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन इज़ वेरी इम्पोर्टेंट। वी टॉक अबाउट दिस लॉ, इनहेरिटेंस लॉ। सो स्टेट हैज़ गिवन अस नाउ 50% की औरतों को 50% अपने माता-पिता की प्रॉपर्टी में उनकी हिस्सेदारी, उनका हकदार है। I was evaluating a thesis from Odisha, which was, conducted with the respondents who were educated. I'm saying educated across caste, across religion. These were the case studies of 200 beyond graduation and masters. Now, very interestingly, there was only 2% women who had exercised their right in claiming the parental property. Now, what was the finding of that? These women who were educated, they did not wanted to lose on the social capital. कि उनको कहा जाए कि अच्छा ये तो बड़ी लालची थी, इसने तो अपना हिस्सा मांग लिया अपने फादर से, अपने भाइयों से. So what I'm saying is, when we talk about that dignity, equality, autonomy, social institution, so this question of shame, stigma, how it is weaved into the structures is also to be addressed. Institutions, cultures, and power relations. I'll give you from my own uh, example. My father passed away, and because mine is a bicultural marriage, so I was told that I have a small share in his. He's given me a small share. So I was not feeling very comfortable. I myself was not feeling very comfortable. I didn't wanted to take that. So because at some point of his life, I had angered him. He was not happy with me. So I felt that नहीं मुझे नहीं लेना, मेरा कोई moral वो नहीं बनता. So I just was discussing this with my friend. She said, no, you take it. Maybe you give it back in a form of gift to your brother, your nephews, your nieces, but you take. You set in that tradition, honor that, take in. So this needs a courage. ये थोड़ी हिम्मत चाहिए होती है कि हम मांगे, है ना? There is a difference. So this is also because we talk about always laws. Laws will be there, but how laws have to be converted into the practice, there also we need to address the question culture, the question of stigma, the question of power relations, the minds, that which become very important. So a nation cannot truly be called developed if half its population continues to face these structural inequalities. Now, the fear of losing social capital is something which is there in the mind of educated women. The idea of Viksit Bharat must be evaluated not only through economic achievement, but through its capacity to create gender just society. Therefore, I would like to conclude by returning to the question with which I began. What does it mean to imagine a developed India from a feminist perspective? A feminist approach does not reject the aspiration for development, rather, it deepens it. It reminds us that development must be measured not only by highways built, industries expanded, GDP increased, but by also including freedoms expanded, inequalities reduced, voices heard, lives transformed. The vision of Viksit Bharat will achieve its fullest meaning only when development becomes a process of democratizing power, expanding capabilities, and enabling every woman, regardless of caste, class, region, religion, to live with dignity and autonomy. Only then can development truly become a social transformation. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone,
Thank you.
for
Thank you.
listening.
Thank you very much, madam. Yeah, thank you very much. It's real, the meaning of the real development. Of course, the freedom, autonomy, and democratizing the power relations in society. Or there are a lot of other things that you have explained, and it has given quite a lot. I think the think tank for future generations, what we have participated today in this today's guest lecture. I think now, मनीष जी, आपका रोल है, तो please I would like to invite मनीष जी to please take it ahead. Yeah, as a discussant of this session. Yeah.
Thank you sir, thank you madam, प्रोफेसर सर, thank you. आप मतलब इतना अद्भुत बोलती हैं, आपको इतने दिनों बाद हमने एक बार फिर से पर्सनल लेवल पे इसके जरिए सुनने का मौका मिला. Really we appreciate all your kind presentation, and it was meaningful when we talk about the equity and equality chances of the lady development. मैं ज्यादा क्या बोलूं, हमारे सीनियर प्रोफेसर वीर प्रसाद सर हैं, क्योंकि सर आप अपने अनुभवों से कुछ इसमें शेयर करें, फिर ताकि हम सब कुछ उसमें जोड़ पाए.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
आप अपनी बात कर लीजिए, आप अपनी बात कर लीजिए.
Sir, I would like to say only very few lines that development is always a choice. It is not by chance. Whenever we say the development will have to take certain efforts in the progressive and in the planned effort. और आजकल तो हम बिहार में हमारी जो जीविका दीदी है, उनका काम बहुत अद्भुत है. और बिहार इस समय कैसे ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन से गुजर रहा है, जहां प्रॉपर्टी राइट्स ट्रांसफर होने की बात आ रही है, सर्वे हो रहा है, मैडम का जो दिशा था, and we have been observing that there is a phenomenal changes, and the number of trajectories and disputes are coming here in the family itself, because women are now ready to claim their ancestral property, not from the parents, from the grandparents and from the great grandparents through the share of their father in the patriarchy and again in the matriarchy. So it is a kind of a thing which we are observing, and we wish to continue our research journey also in this area, that how this is all changing the structure of the family. And love, affection, and order. What else I can say? I used to say that it is always good that if it is inclusive, sustainable, and it is a multidimensional. While quoting only very few lines, बाबा साहब अम्बेडकर जी जो कहते हैं कि मन का विकास अगर संभव हो तभी मानव अस्तित्व का अंतिम उद्देश्य होना चाहिए। ऐसा ही अमर्त्य सेन जी का भी कहना था कि विकास उन वास्तविक स्वतंत्रताओं के विस्तार की प्रक्रिया के रूप में देखा जा सकता है जिसका लोग आनंद लेते हैं। And there are many more citations and quotations, Anthony Giddens, for Paulo Saab, Karl Marx, etc. But madam, it is not a right time to speak more and most, since many more colleagues are there. Saurav Anand is there, who is the research scholar and a very active member of RC25 and not the RC29. And he's also a different member, but he's gaining attention since you are a very lovely and a charming face and very, very fruitful discussion whenever we listen to you, Professor Madam Arvinder Ansari. So really, I thank you very much. And now the session is always free for questions, and we would request Professor B. Prasad sir to put your certain remarks, sir. Sir, it is over to you, Prasad sir.
Thank you, Manish ji. Let it be done by Kale. He is the chairperson of the session.
No,
My
sir.
request will be one, that if there are some research scholars and colleagues, let them ask the question first. I'll be the last one to speak.
If the students are willing, the participants are willing, researchers are there in the session. If you have any question, you may raise it. There are many scholars, as we are observing it. Saurav Ashutosh Vyas Saab is there. He is a very senior member of RC29. He has already coordinated and convened the chair. Vinita madam is there. Karthik is there.
Yeah, that's what. Let them ask. I'll be the last one to speak.
Devman Saab has raised the question, sir. Please open your video and audio. We'll be happy to see you directly.
जी मैंने इनका सवाल पढ़ लिया। मैं उत्तर दूं विद द परमिशन ऑफ द चेयर।
जी मैडम, प्लीज।
देवनाथ जी आपने सही बात। आई सॉरी, फर्स्ट लेट मी सी योर नेम प्रॉपर्ली। आई शुड
बोलो, 1 मिनट में बोलो क्या बोलो क्या
देवमन जी आपका सवाल बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है। आई थिंक दैट वाज द सेंट्रल आर्गुमेंट ऑफ माय लेक्चर आल्सो, माय थीम आल्सो, कि हम डेवलपमेंट की बात अगर करते हैं और उसमें अगर जेंडर पर्सपेक्टिव नहीं है, जेंडर पर्सपेक्टिव, अगेन आई एम इंसिस्टिंग एंड अंडरलाइनिंग दिस, along with feminist perspective, it becomes very important that we are talking about in very ideologically. So it is very important, पहले हम कहते थे डेवलपमेंट को पर कैपिटा इनकम, consumption, but these are all very false indicators. Actual indicator is the social development of the society, and where when we talk about social transformation, say for example Punjab was an example of prosperous state, green revolution, but we cannot put Punjab in the category we cannot say it's a developed state. Now why can't we say developed state? Because the honor crimes, the shame crimes are highest in Punjab and Haryana. The adverse sex ratio. So ये एक था जिसकी वजह से आप देखेंगे कि पंजाब का पोस्ट 2011 सेंसस, पोस्ट 2001 सेंसस, जो आंकड़े हमारे पास आने लगे और जिस तरह की ऑनर किलिंग, शेम किलिंग्स की बात, ऑनर किलिंग एंड शेम किलिंग both kind of were very important issues, and we felt that if women are not progressing, and progressing, I know we have to also change our mindset. हमें अपने मन ये बदलनी पड़ेगी अपनी मानसिकता। जब हम कहते हैं डेवलपमेंट की बात, तो उसमें हमें ये बहुत इंश्योर करना है कि सोशल ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन, स्कूल में हमने लड़कियों को भर्ती कर दिया, लेकिन वो लड़कियों को अगर जब हमने भर्ती कर दिया, ये एक हमारे पास एक आंकड़ा आ गया, बट हमें उसके साथ ड्रॉप आउट रेट्स को भी देखना है। ड्रॉप आउट के साथ हमें ड्रॉप आउट कारणों को भी देखना है कि क्या हो रहा है। उसके साथ साथ आपको और चीज़ों की भी सेंसिटिविटी होनी चाहिए। बहुत सारी रिपोर्ट्स आजकल आ रही हैं, एंड स्पेशली प्रोफेसर BN प्रसाद बैठे हैं यहाँ पे जो पॉलिसीज का एनालिसिस और एवोल्यूशन करते हैं, बट मैं एक अपने एग्जांपल, मैंने एक छोटी सी स्टडी पर्दा पे की थी ईस्टर्न यूपी। जब मैं ईस्टर्न यूपी में इन बच्चों को देखी, इनको मिली, तो ये समाज भी बदल रहा है। ऐसा नहीं है कि वे अपने बच्चियों को, मुस्लिम समुदाय से मेरी बात हो रही थी क्योंकि मुझे पर्दा और हिजाब के ऊपर मैंने अपना एक आर्टिकल लिखा था। जब मैं उन लोगों से बात कर रही थी तो मैंने देखा कि सब पढ़ना चाहती हैं और माँ बाप भी पढ़ाना चाहते हैं। ऐसा नहीं है कि नहीं पढ़ना चाहती, लेकिन वहाँ क्या था, स्कूल नहीं थे। यदि स्कूल थे तो बहुत दूर थे। ये बहुत सारी रिपोर्ट्स में आया। अच्छा, अगर हिम्मत करके उस दूर वाले स्कूल में पहुंचा भी दिया तो टीचर नहीं है और इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, टॉयलेट नहीं है। और अगर 13 से 14 साल की बच्ची है या 15 साल की बच्ची है जिसको इस तरह की प्रॉब्लम्स है, आई मीन नेचुरल मेनिस्ट्रेशन, और ये तो मेनिस्ट्रेशनल हाइजीन के लिए उसके पास वहाँ टॉयलेट है, चेंज करने के लिए कोई इस तरह की सुविधाएं हैं, तो उससे क्या होता है, अगर आप हफ्ता भर स्कूल नहीं गए या 10 दिन स्कूल नहीं गए, 8 दिन स्कूल, की डिसकंटिन्यूटी भी पैदा होती है। तो ये स्ट्रक्चरल चीज़ों को भी हमें बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट है हमें देखने के लिए कि ये बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग सी चीज़ है। मैं आपको बताती हूँ एक और एग्जाम्पल। वी आर लिविंग इन दिल्ली, दिल्ली का डेवलप शास्त्रा यमनंदा, आप या म्यूट कर लीजिए। तो मैं आपको एक छोटा सा एग्जांपल अपने लिव्ड एक्सपीरियंस से आपने फिर ऑन कर लिया। शास्त्रा यमनंदा, प्लीज 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 म्यूट योरसेल्फ, प्लीज म्यूट योरसेल्फ। शास्त्रा, प्लीज म्यूट योरसेल्फ।
We will mute.
So I was talking, like for instance, our perception of city. हमारे सिटी का क्या परसेप्शन होता है, हमारे रोड्स की, हमारे अंडरपास, हमारी ये सब चीज़ों पे हमारे जहन में औरतें कितनी होती हैं। मैं एक छोटा सा एग्जांपल देती हूँ। दिल्ली की सबसे फेमस मार्केट है लाजपत नगर मार्केट, और वो वहाँ पे लोग दिल्ली क्या, बाहर से भी लोग आते हैं, शॉपिंग के लिए जाते हैं। सो व्हेन आई वाज एक्सपेक्टिंग माय फर्स्ट चाइल्ड, सो आई हैड आल्सो गॉन फॉर शॉपिंग, आई मीन आई गो टू दैट मार्केट। तो मैं जब वहाँ गई तो फर्स्ट टाइम मुझे ऐसा लगा कि एक्चुअली वॉशरूम, देयर वाज नो वॉशरूम, there was no washroom for ladies.
You are
And
right.
so now this is something which is concerned with urban planning, town planning, ki hai nahi, they never thought that market is meant for women, but women would need this. When Kiran Bedi came to our university, she gave a lecture. She said that when she joined IPS, she was the first woman to join IPS, she had to change. थाना में उनको पुलिस स्टेशन में चेंज करना था. There was no separate changing room for women, क्योंकि कभी स्टेट ने सोचा ही नहीं था कि महिलाएं भी आएंगी और उनके लिए भी आपको. So this vision is very important. अंडरपास हम बनाते हैं, लेकिन अगर अंडरपास डिजर्टेड है, रात को मैं गाड़ी चलाती हूँ, मैं जब रात को गाड़ी चलाती हूँ तो अगर मुझे पुलिस वाला रोकेगा तो मैं नहीं रुकूंगी. आई विल नॉट स्टॉप. Why I will not stop? The fear which is in my mind, and that fear of that police wala comes from, I don't know what he's going to do. I'm ready to pay a fine next day in the court or somewhere. But so how the worldview is perceived is very important, and we have to address these questions and policies also. Now there is lot of debate on child care leave. ठीक है, चाइल्ड केयर लीव पे बहुत लीव है. स्टेट ऑल्सो थिंक्स पेट्रियार्किकल, उन्होंने माँ को चाइल्ड केयर लीव दे दी. एट द एज ब्रैकेट इज बेसिकली 0 to 18 years, की उस बीच में जब भी बच्चों को केयर की जरूरत हो तो आपको चाइल्ड केयर लीव मिल जाएगी. My experience in the university has been that majorly जब बच्चे बड़े हो जाते हैं 7 वर्ष या 6 वर्ष की आयु के बाद, 5th 6th के बाद इतना बच्चों को मतलब माँ की उस वक्त ऐसे छुट्टी की लंबी जरूरत नहीं पड़ती. लेकिन ये क्योंकि लीव का प्रावधान आ गया, तो तब लीव कैसे ली जाए, एग्जाम्स पे लीव लेनी शुरू हो गई, बोर्ड एग्जाम्स पे 1 साल की लीव शुरू हो गई. और उससे दिस इज वेरी शॉर्ट साइटेडनेस. भाई आप लीव का प्रोविजन बनाइए. लीव के प्रोविजन में ये प्रोविजन होता, आइदर ऑफ द पेरेंट कैन टेक द लीव. अगर फादर साइंस पढ़ा सकता है तो शायद वो 10 दिन, 15 दिन, 20 महीने, 1 महीने वो सब्जेक्ट्स अगर फादर बेटर हैंडल कर सकता है तो फादर ले ले, मदर एक्सरसाइज कर सकते हो. मतलब आई एम वेरी हैप्पी अबाउट दैट देयर इज अ चाइल्ड केयर लीव, बट द ऑपरेशनल पार्ट ऑफ इट हैज टू बी एनालाइज्ड. इस तरह से बहुत सारी पॉलिसीज हैं जिनको हमें देखना होगा. एंड दैट इज व्हाई feminist theories talk about stand positionality, that the policies should align with the everyday experiences and reality, so the researches which emerge should feed into the policies. I hope I've answered your question.
The answer is very much clear. May we take another question? We have only 15 more minutes in hand. If there is any question.
काले साहब नहीं है क्या?
Of course, है ना. नहीं, मुझे ये थोड़ा सा, of course, madam has covered so many, and it's not difficult, maybe easy to answer everything in 1 hour or something. But how do we, maybe as a strategy or maybe a bottom-up approach in terms of the preparing and plan, or the a perspective plan, okay, which will be more inclusive, including like we are working now the NTDNTs people, okay, or the issues of the children among the NTDNT communities, और nomadic, और maybe घुमंतु है, अर्ध घुमंतु है, जहाँ स्कूल की बात कर रहे हैं हम लोग, ड्रॉप आउट की बात कर रहे हैं, the structural inequalities, not only the operational things, okay, but the structural inequalities are far deeper than what we have envisaged or seen in the recent phenomena. So how that can become a part and parcel of the whole process of this Viksit Bharat, आत्मनिर्भर भारत, और सबकी मतलब इस तरीके से, क्योंकि यहाँ का एक भी अगर तबका छूट जाता है तो शायद मुझे लगता है कि वो सही मायने में हम लोग नहीं उसको सेलिब्रेट कर पाएंगे, मनाएंगे, जब आधे से ज्यादा अगर लोग, जैसे आपने कहा उस तरीके से, तो वो एक बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट है और बार बार मतलब डिस्टर्ब करने वाली बात है. हाउ डू वी incorporate and maybe a part and parcel in terms of the decision making of all the processes? Okay, so I think that is really, because I don't have answer, because and I'm not maybe immediate kind of maybe, but some light on this, madam, if you could.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. काले साहब मैं 5 मिनट बोल सकता हूँ क्या?
जी 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 आप.
Of
Madam.
course. Yeah.
Thank you. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल मैं बहुत बधाई देना चाहता हूँ अपने कलीग और फ्रेंड को, डॉक्टर प्रोफेसर अरविंदर अंसारी मैडम ने.
Thank you.
ऑलमोस्ट सारे एस्पेक्ट, वॉट एवर मे बी द वेरिएबल्स विद इन द ग्रेटर एम्बिट ऑफ वुमेन एम्पावरमेंट विद डेवलपमेंट एंड ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन में सब कुछ आपने ऑलमोस्ट कवर किया है. मैं बस 2-3 पॉइंट्स रखना चाहता हूँ. मेरे अपने व्यूज हैं, इसमें कोई क्वेश्चन नहीं है आपके लिए. पहला व्यूज तो यह है कि वी आर क्रेजी अबाउट, द मॉडर्न इकोनॉमिस्ट आर क्रेजी अबाउट ह्यूमन डेवलपमेंट इंडेक्स.
Yes.
What about happiness index?
Yes, of course. I
Because in terms of happiness index, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan are far ahead than India, which is claiming it. Within few years, we will be the best crew and we will be the 5th largest economy. So economy is just one part of human life. My first injection to the entire discussion is happiness. And that happiness doesn't ensure you the material culture doesn't ensure the non-material satisfaction. That's a very critical issue to be thought of. और मैं इसलिए कह रहा हूँ कि यहाँ कुछ रिसर्च स्कॉलर बैठे हैं, तो आपको तो क्या कहना है, आप तो कलीग हैं हमारे, लेकिन मैं उन बडिंग स्कॉलर्स के लिए कुछ पॉइंट्स सामने रखना चाह रहा हूँ कि जो ब्रॉडर फ्रेमवर्क आप जब डिस्कस करते हैं फेमिनिज्म पे, विज़ ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन, सोशल डेवलपमेंट, तो दिस हैप्पीनेस इंडेक्स शुड बी टेकन इनटू कंसिडरेशन.
very important. So
नंबर 2, मैं बात करना चाहूंगा एंजिल की बहुत ही फेमस किताब है स्टेट डेवलपमेंट एंड फैमिली. यहाँ पे वो कहते हैं कि उत्तर ऋग्वैदिक काल में व्हेन एग्रीकल्चर केम इनटू एग्जिस्टेंस और परमानेंट सेटलमेंट स्टार्ट हुआ, लोगों का गांव नगर बसने लगे, उसके बाद द ओनली मीन्स ऑफ प्रोडक्शन वाज लैंड, which was being controlled by the male members. The shrewd and clever male members have controlled the means of production, and woman has been relegated in the background, 4 wall of the house. आपका काम बच्चा पैदा करना है और घर का खाना बनाना है. So that was the basically starting point for the subjugation of the woman. Otherwise, ऋग्वैदिक काल में गाय मैत्री और गार्गी के जैसे एग्जाम्पल्स आपके सामने रहते हैं, where there was no discrimination on the basis of gender in terms of rituals, in terms of work, in terms of cultural hegemony. तो वहां से जो स्टार्टिंग हुई है, उसके बाद this situation has deteriorated very fast in the medieval period, जहाँ पे पर्दा प्रथा और बाल विवाह और विधवा पुनर्विवाह नहीं होना, ये सारी चीजें सामने आई. And by Gupta period it has reached to the zenith of the deterioration. इसके पीछे कारण क्या है? कारण सिंपली एक है कि द वुमन हैज बीन लेफ्ट आउट फ्रॉम द प्रोडक्टिव रिसोर्सेस. अब इन द last 100 years, there is no denial of the fact there has been economic development as well as social development. Education बढ़ा, economic opportunities बढ़ी, jobs बढ़े, ये तमाम चीजों के बढ़ने के बाद women has entered into the labor market as well. Now they are claiming their independence in the social hierarchy. But I have three paradigms, madam, for consideration of all of you. पहला paradigm है कि the flexible choice paradigm for women has been so weak that they cannot challenge the patriarchal hegemonic control. Number one. Number two paradigm is some amount of flexibility is there in the choice paradigm for the woman. When I talk of choice, I'm talking choice in terms of their lifestyle, in their economy, in their work, in their own body control. So some amount of flexibility has been given due to urbanization, modernization, literacy, and so many factors. Western value system. Yeah, and most of the women are still in the second category. The most of the women are not in a position to challenge the patriarchal hegemonic control because they are at the subservient position. थोड़ा पैसा तो जैसे क्लर्क हैं, टीचर हैं, पैसा का तो कमा लेते हैं, लेकिन जो patriarchal norms है, उस patriarchal norms को आप challenge नहीं कर पाते हैं. And third paradigm is the choice paradigm has risen to the extent that it successfully challenged the patriarchal hegemonic control. और उसमें इंदिरा नूरी जैसे लोग हैं, मायावती जैसे लोग हैं, इंदिरा गांधी जैसे लोग हैं. Very few. It is less than 0.1%. So the majority of the women are basically fall in the first category, where there is no choice paradigm. And very few women who avail the facilities of education, modernization, liberalization, and other economic and social factors, they can have some amount of, जैसे आपने अभी एग्जाम्पल में कहा था कि मैं सामान लेना चाहती हूँ, तब भी पेट्रियार्कल हेजेमोनिक कंट्रोल इतना स्ट्रॉन्ग है कि आपको नहीं लेने देता है, बट यू कैन बाय इट. बट वुमन, 98% वुमन हु आर heavily dependent economically on their son and their husband, they don't have any flexible choice paradigm. तो जब भी आप वुमन empowerment की बात करते हैं, vis-a-vis modernization, urbanization, and number of other factors, you should take into consideration, even for the policy implication, you should think about the first category, where 98% women are living there, and they don't have any choice.
Very rightly pointed out by you when I was talking about this question of choice and patriarchal control, when we're educated women who
Yeah,
are
that's right.
do not have, freedom to use the resources, and very rightly pointed out, empowerment is emancipation. That's why I brought in happiness. I mentioned it because I did not went into the detail of it, because empowerment should be emancipation from fear, using my
Everything,
own agency.
Economy, social, psychological, everything.
Exercising my choice to shape my life.
That's what
my life.
The kind of woman you are talking about, they are less than 2% in the second category.
Of course. क्योंकि मैं तो अब इतने साल 30 साल से यही देख रही हूँ. I work with vice chancellors, women vice chancellors, deans. बहुत लोगों के साथ, तो वो कहाँ से आए? No, when we talk about, in fact, I give example of our president, the previous president, even Murmuru, and the previous president, I'm forgetting her name.
Patil.
Pratibha Patil.
She said, but can we call her an empowered woman?
नहीं, वो husband के साथ उनका nomenclature हमेशा चलता था. That is very surprising.
उसके मुकाबले में मुझे भावरी देवी empowered.
Yeah, that's right.
Malala empowered.
But the issue, ma'am, it's a very fruitful discussion. The issue is Bhavri Devi is an exception. It cannot be the trend. Exceptions are everywhere.
हाँ, लेकिन उसने इस्तेमाल किया ना, she can be a case study for us.
Yeah, but how this exception can be transformed into a general trend? That is the challenge of the academia as well as the policymakers.
Yes, of course. Yeah. Voice नहीं दे पा रहे हम. That's what Gayatri Spivak said, that can we give them voice? We are not able to give them voice.
Yeah, that's right. तो मेरा तो कुछ ऑब्जर्वेशन बस इतना ही था.
बहुत अच्छा सर, बहुत अच्छा.
जब आप चीज को वुमेन एम्पावरमेंट की बात करें, तो वुमेन एम्पावरमेंट में उस सोशल कैटेगरी की बात करें जो फर्स्ट पैराडाइम के अंदर आते हैं, और उनके empowerment होने से second और third paradigm तो ऐसे ही empowered है, third paradigm तो ऐसे ही empowered है. Can you
जी,
challenge Mrs. Indira Gandhi? Can you challenge Mayawati? Can you challenge Indra Nuri? But they are very tiny people. They cannot challenge the patriarchal hegemonic control of our Indian society. Number one. Number two, बहुत important ये है, neither the British government nor the Indian government has formulated a policy which has sufficient power to challenge the patriarchal hegemonic control.
state does not want that.
State doesn't. State basically wants a space where they can grow economically and push forward their political agenda. जब मैं ऐसा बोलता हूँ तो लोग कहते हैं रेडिकल बात कर रहा है ये. But that is the reality. That is the reality.
Patriarchal.
Absolutely correct, sir. Yes.
So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity and very nice talking to you. Always I am eager to talk to you. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you,
सर
sir. Thank
हम ये कह सकते हैं कि जिन महान शख्सियत का नाम लिया गया वो हमारे लिए आशा का किरण है. चाहे वो ताई का नाम लिया या मैडम मायावती जी का नाम लिया या किसी का भी, ये कॉमन स्कूल गोअन जो स्टूडेंट्स हैं जो फीमेल कैटेगरी की हैं उनके लिए आशा है कि वो भी एक दिन ऐसा बन सकती हैं. और मैडम के साथ साथ जो भी स्कॉलर्स इसमें लिखे हैं, चाहे वो मैडम गायत्री स्पीवॉक का नाम लें या फिर रोइना रॉबिन्सन जी को कहें या और देयर आर मेनी मोर रिसर्चर्स, ये सभी इस बात को सिर्फ और सिर्फ आशा दिलाते हैं कि अच्छी सुबह होगी. गवर्नमेंट इज डूइंग अ लॉट एंड द पीपल हु आर आल्सो इन्वॉल्वड इन द पॉलिसी मेकिंग decision making actions are doing their best to, because you madam as a professor Arvinder Ansari, you know it, where are the loopholes. You can easily find out the loopholes being a woman and you can put a check wall on these things, and maybe might be the 5 years, maybe might be the 10 years at 2047 we'll have a different India जहां पर ये विषय थोड़ा सबसाइड कर जाएगा और हमें सुनने आएगा कि चलो आओ हाथ मिलकर के साथ में जीते हैं और खुश होकर भारत को और आगे बढ़ने का अवसर देते हैं. तो आज का तो विषय इतना रोचक और रुचिकर है कि इस पे कितनी भी देर बात को सुना जाए, कहा जाए, समय हमेशा कम पड़ेगा. लेकिन फिर भी समय की सीमा है. So we wish and pray a very good time for all of us, and simultaneously we offer our gratitude and thanks to Professor Arvinder Ansari ji, जिन्होंने बड़े व्यस्त शेड्यूल के बावजूद भी हम सबके लिए थोड़ी देर समय निकाला. And simultaneously we offer our gratitude to Professor Sampat Kale sir. काले साहब ने इनिशिएटिव लिया और RC29 की तरफ से उन्होंने हम सबको एक मंच दिया जोड़ने का. एंड ऑब्वियसली हमारे गार्जियन है, लोकल है बिहार में, प्रोफेसर प्रसाद सर, जो हमेशा हम लोग को बताते हैं, सिखाते हैं. सर आपने हमें पूरी देर इस बात को सुनने सीखने की प्रेरणा दी और अपने फाइंडिंग्स भी रखे. बहुत धन्यवाद और प्रणाम सर. और हमारे बहुत सारे जो रिसर्चर हैं इसमें, इन द कैपेसिटी ऑफ स्कॉलर, इन द कैपेसिटी ऑफ ए पोस्ट डॉक्टरल फेलो में भी, इन द कैपेसिटी ऑफ द टीचिंग फैकल्टी or a industrial organization people, we offer our gratitude to all of you. मैडम निशी फ्रांसिस जी जो कि मेरी दोस्त भी हैं और बहुत अच्छी कुलीग हैं हमारी, तो हम आपको बहुत दिल से धन्यवाद देते हैं जो आप हमारे साथ लगातार जुड़ी रहती हैं. एंड हाउ कैन आई से दैट at last but not the least, the Indian Sociological Society, which is the base for me, you and all of us, who has given a stage to connect with each other, and always it gives us happiness. So मैं काले साहब से और मैडम से यही कहूंगा कि मैं तो दुआ करता हूं हर शुक्रवार को एक बार आपको मिलने और सुनने का मौका मिले. इसी तरह से हमारे अगले 2 साल बीते, इससे अच्छा और कुछ भी नहीं हो सकता.
I think Kale साहब को conclude करना चाहिए because he is the chairperson.
Yes, I now return this stage to Professor Kale साहब. Sir, please.
No, sir, thank you very much. And as you said that, okay, मैडम बहुत व्यस्त रही, 1-2 बार हमने प्रयास किया, लेकिन फाइनली वी कुड मेक इट पॉसिबल दैट ओके विथ ऑल योर एफर्ट्स एंड वेरी जेनरसली मैडम हैज एक्सेप्टेड आवर इनविटेशन. नाउ शी इज अ सेक्रेटरी ऑफ द इंडियन सोशोलॉजिकल सोसाइटी. नहीं भी नहीं बोल सकते हैं, कभी थोड़ा ये भी प्रॉब्लम होता है, लेकिन ऐसा लग रहा था मैडम बाकी और अवसर के बजाय भी मतलब आज सुनते रहे हम बहुत ज्यादा तक. मतलब ये खत्म हो रहा है, कंक्लूड करने आप बोलने जा रहे हैं, तो मुझे लग रहा था और भी मुद्दे हैं, लेकिन आई थिंक समय की सीमा है और इस तरीके से है. लेकिन विथ ऑल maybe these points, I think we will take it ahead with a lot of maybe the positive energy, and we can have I think this will really help us in terms of trigger a lot of discussions in future also. And this is not the one and only. I think we can have a very more kind of maybe whether it's online or offline. I think next month we are meeting in Nagpur also. I think you have accepted that invitation also. And of course, all my colleagues who has been always motivating, like Professor B.N. Prasad है, आशुतोष जी है, और अनिर्बान बैनर्जी सर है, खास करके बिजी शेड्यूल से भी मतलब कोई इनको नहीं है, काली जी मैं हूँ वहाँ पे, और सब लोग मतलब डॉक्टर फ्रांसिस है, सौरभ जी आए हैं, और कई सारे मेरे छात्र हैं यहाँ से, टाटा इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ सोशल साइंस तुलजापुर कैंपस से है, अलायंस यूनिवर्सिटी बैंगलोर से भी कई सारे छात्र हैं। और मुझे लगता है मैडम कि ये सीरीज जो है, और अलग अलग जो आपने कहा था कभी हमको कि प्लीज ज्यादा से ज्यादा आप इस पे ज्यादा फोकस करिए, तो मुझे लगता है कि हम लोग बहुत अच्छे से काम करने की कोशिश करेंगे। आपका सपोर्ट है, और खास करके बोइनो जी का सपोर्ट अपने सेक्रेटरीट से, इंडियन सोशलॉजिकल सोसाइटी दिल्ली से भी, मतलब वो हमेशा तत्पर है और कर रहे हैं, और प्रेसिडेंट साहू सर भी मतलब हमेशा इसको मोटिवेट कर रहे हैं। आई थिंक विद दिस we will stop here because we have crossed 1 minute. Okay, so that I think with the permission of all my senior colleagues, Manish ji, Prasad ji, and all, and Madam Ansari ji. Okay, so thank you very much, Madam.
Thank
And
you. Thank you.
see you again in some other
I
occasion.
just
Yes.
want to
Thank
say
you very
one-
much.
One
Thank you.
thing, I'm very happy that RC29 has taken this initiative and this lead, and I would request you to continue and make it maybe a series once in a month or twice in a month. And if some form of, you can later on have a one-page write-up on all these, and can preserve it, document it, that these
Yeah.
are the series of lectures you had. So that would be really very good contribution, and I think that should be the contribution of RCs. And my thanks and gratitude for taking this lead and initiative to the members, to the convener of RC29. Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much.
Thank you
Thanks a
very
lot. Thanks a lot. Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah, yeah. Thanks.